Hello and welcome to Life Beyond the Numbers, the podcast where we share stories, insights and strategies that go beyond some of the numbers we encounter in our work life. I'm Susan Lee. I work with organisations who put people first. I've lived and worked in many countries. I've met people who love what they do and people who don't. People who bring their full selves to work and people who won't. And together with my guests, we place a lens on and focus in on the people side of work life. Because we know that it is people who do the work, not numbers. And if we are treated well, we will perform well and might even generate better numbers. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Greta Solomon on Life Beyond the Numbers. Greta, you are so welcome.
Thank you, Susan. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about.
So am I. And Greta and I met on a course and I got to follow her work and I read her book, Heart, Sass and Soul, that is going to come up throughout this interview for sure, because I think it's probably life-changing. It's one of those books that maybe depending on where you are in life, it can really help you get under the skin of a couple of things that are happening for you. So we'll talk more about that later. But first, let's go into the workplace a bit, because I also really like what you say about business writing, Greta, and how it should be bold, straightforward and direct, when actually a lot of us feel that that's not really appropriate in the workplace and tend to kind of talk around things or use jargon. So how do we communicate better at work?
I think the very first thing we need to do is throw away almost everything that you've learned from school. And if you went to university, throw that away as well. People come to me and the first thing they say, if they're a native English speaker, they'll have hang-ups about their writing and think their writing's not good enough. If they have English as a foreign language, they'll always say, oh, my English isn't very good. And they'll start to overcompensate by using these flowery words, this jargon. But absolutely everybody has been tainted by this thought that you have to use these very long sentences, that you have to reference everyone else's opinion and bury your own, and that you have to do this academic thing where you build up all your evidence, all your data, everything that's going on, and you lead to the big crescendo at the end. But the problem is that we need to start with the main message and not lead people down this long meandering path to then finally say what you want to say. And even then, people find that perhaps they're thinking about office politics. Can they say that and get away with that? What if they put themselves on the line and it's wrong? And people have so many different thoughts and feelings and fears going on that it really is a big unpacking. And that's what I do in my corporate workshops. We're unpacking everything, all the mindset stuff, all the bad habits they've learned. And we're kind of starting again, really, with a blank slate in a way. And so it's really can be very powerful.
So when we're talking about business writing, are we talking about everything that goes on, whether it's an email or a report to my boss or something that's going external?
Absolutely everything. So it's the same principles for writing an email, writing a report, writing a memo, writing some kind of giant proposal that's going to tender or going to a client. It's absolutely the same principles that are needed.
So what do we do then? We just waffle on,
yeah,
essentially, rather than actually say what it is we want or we need.
Yeah, the problem is people focus on themselves and what they think they need from the document instead of focusing on their readers. So one of the first things to do is to spend a lot more time planning. So I tell my clients to spend up to 50% of your time actually planning, thinking, preparing, looking at your readers. Who are they? What do they want? What do you want them to think, feel, say, and do after they've read your document, what's the most important thing to include? Are they interested in your document in the first place? And we think everyone's interested in what we have to say, and they maybe do not care less, and we have to work really hard then to get their interest. So it's all about really getting out of that really stressful beta energy and taking yourself off somewhere really calm, getting a pad of paper, getting a pencil, and slowing down your brain waves. And the kind of act of like using a pencil on the page accesses a different part of the brain. So then you can actually get in a more creative zone and actually really think about what you want to say. And even just doing that makes a massive difference.
So let's say I'm in an office and I'm sending 60 emails a day. And never getting my message through, or that's what it seems like, or nobody's reading on the other side. What can I do to start thinking about this in a different way?
I think the first thing is to think about your title, so your subject, and to make that super snappy about what the main message of the email is. Like, what do you want? Do you want a response from this? Is this just something for them to read and then just for their information? Do you want to ask a question? If you can give the other person the main piece of information in the subject heading and in the first line, then it doesn't matter if they don't read the rest, or it doesn't matter if it's not perfectly written or anything. You've got your message across. It always comes back to the message and thinking about that first.
I like what you say there about perfectly written, because I guess that's what a lot of us tend to go for, the perfectly written without the message almost.
Yeah, they really do. And you know, it's funny, I used to be a journalist, and there was one commissioning editor, and it was really funny because when she would commission me to write something, the email would be full of typos. She'd barely write the words. You could see that she'd written it in a mad scram in, 30 seconds. And I thought at the time, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is so unprofessional. But then in the end, I quite really admired it at the same time, because I thought she's a super commissioning editor because she's getting her message across. I don't recommend that you don't spell and you have typos everywhere, but she was doing the work that needed to be done without all that fear of what I call grammar shaming, which is where you have had people in the past who only focus on your spelling or your syntax or the technical aspects of your writing, and totally ignore the meaning, and it can block you and then make you want to do this long, flowery writing. And she went to the other extreme, which of course isn't recommended, but it's kind of quite admirable at the same time. We need to get that middle ground where we're not worrying too much about what other people think and we're getting our message across.
So let's say there's a typo that you've missed or whatever, and it's not perfect and you haven't wasted a lot of time making it perfect, but then somebody comes back and says, oh, please do a spell checker. You also have to balance, I guess, with the other personalities around.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I was thinking about this morning, actually. That's kind of like a power play that people, and it solely is a power play to it. And it's just exactly what I mean with the grammar shaming, to ignore every great thing you've written and think about the one typo and use that to shame you. It's a shaming episode that happens.
Yeah,
and we
control.
Yes, exactly. And we have to separate that from the writing, in a sense. And to give another anecdote, once I had a job in a consultancy, working in communications, sitting next to another communications manager. And sometimes she would stand up in the office and she would say very loudly, there's a typo in this, and referencing my work that she was editing. It was just horrific. And she would do that. And I could see that's a power play, because of course there's a typo. When you're a professional writer, there are typos, there are errors, which is why you do like 3 rounds of editing. You know that the first one is just your creative draft. You're just getting your thoughts out. And people will try and shame you about that creative process. And so you have to work through that internally. That's the only way you can deal with this, is to think, why is that person shaming me? What did they do? How did it affect me? How can I work through this? How can I understand that I'm doing a creative process? Of course, there's errors. And when you make peace with it yourself, you just begin to react in a different way to these people. Perhaps you just ignore it. Perhaps you have a good comeback, but you don't let it affect you. And it's this deeper inner work that you have to do that you don't even think you need to do at all.
And I think I'm generalizing, but for a lot of us would feel, oh my God, now I have to be extra vigilant about how I send that email in future or write that report, because I don't want that happening.
Yeah, but that's the total opposite, because then you go back to all the bad habits, you stifle your creativity, and what you write is probably really dull and ineffective, and it makes you more scared next time to express your ideas. So it's this real fine line. And I sort of tell to everybody, I have this model, I use the communication pyramid, and at the top is the mind, then we have the body. So the mind is all this grammar stuff, the spelling stuff, all the stuff that we're so scared about. And then we have the body, which is all our communication techniques, our how to. And then we have the heart space, which is the particular words we use, like our creative words. And then we go down to the soul and the voice. And we have to understand that we can go down through these layers and not worry so much about the mind stuff. That's why I never teach grammar. We don't need grammar. We use spell checkers on Microsoft Word or whatever you're using. That comes later in the process.
Absolutely. We hear a lot about bringing your true self into the workplace, or your full self, or being yourself at work. And part of that is being able to express yourself.
Yeah.
And express yourself as you.
Yes, definitely.
And I'm not sure that's something many of us know how to do either.
No, I think we've been historically taught that we're not welcome at work. And that's been the way for a long time. I mean, I'm 44 now. So certainly the mentality I grew up in was that you have your work self and you have your private self, and you detach the two, and you work in whatever that job is, but you don't bring yourself to work. And it's changing now. Younger generations totally bringing themselves to work, but we don't know how to do that really. And I think that affects the way we write, and it affects the way we communicate. We think we can't be informal, and we think we have to put on this voice. It's kind of like the Shakespearian voice almost. Some people put on this persona that is just not them, but they think, oh, that's my work persona. I'm wearing my suit now. That's how I am. And of course, that's changing with the pandemic and Zooming and everything. Some people are not wearing their business suits now. We're not really doing that, but it's a really tricky balance, I think.
It is. I agree. And I'm of a similar vintage, a little bit older, but it was definitely the way. And I think I would say we rebelled against that a little bit when we started work, but I went into the accountancy profession and it was very much batted back. And by the time you came out through those doors, you were a professional, and everything else went into the background. And I guess I cut myself off from a lot of my other intelligence, and it was very much about the mind and professionalism. And then that does impact your writing, because you sound like a robot.
Yes, exactly. You're losing your sense of self. And I think the only reason why I was able to go into a creative career, well, not the only reason, but I studied psychology and went into journalism about sort of 6 months after graduating. But I think it was my naivety. I think because I didn't understand that I was supposed to put on a false self at work. I didn't really click with that at the time. And in the space between graduating and then getting my first job, I was going for all these interviews. I signed up with an agency, and she'd sent me to loads of different interviews for different jobs. And there was one in an investment bank. I was supposed to be interviewing for some kind of assistant that would lead to a banking role. We had this interview and it went fine. And we were talking and I thought, oh, this is fine. And then he looked at me really directly and said, this is what your life is going to be like when you're here. You're going to be working till like 9, 10 at night, every night. You're going to be really in a very intense, very highly pressured environment, but it's okay. We have a pharmacist on site. We have all of these amenities. We have a place where you can get food. So it's absolutely fine. And he painted this vivid imagery for me of what my life was now going to be like if I got this job. And he said, oh, so what do you think then? And then I was like, that just sounds awful. That's not somewhere I want to work. I remember he was horrified and sort of shocked and sort of and curious at the same time. And he didn't know what to say, actually. And he just sort of, the interview closed. And the agency that had got me this interview, she was fuming. She was absolutely furious and said, never, ever let yourself go like that again. Never, ever do that again. Agree to everything they say and say you're perfectly happy with everything. And it was a massive learning, because I thought, why do I have to fake it? Why do I have to pretend I'm okay? And I think that point comes to many of us at some point. It came to me really early. I mean, I was like 21. It came super early that I'm not going to fake it at work. But we all reach that point where we're so fed up of not being ourselves that we just can't take it anymore. And I think people burn out and they have a major imposter syndrome sort of attack or something. It makes them break down that false barrier that they were forced to put in place in order to survive, to make money, earn some kind of a living.
Yeah, and I actually read an article just at the weekend. I saw it on Twitter, and it was called Our Disconnected Lives. And it was really about that. What about the girl who goes to college, becomes a lawyer, but really loves farm animals? And 20 years later, this kind of crisis happens. And there's a few examples like that. And yeah, there are a lot of us who live disconnected lives, disconnected from our expressive side as well. And
definitely.
And on that then as well, there's this Apple TV program called Severance, where when you go into work, into this company, they actually inject something into you so that once you get in the lift to go down to the basement where the work is, you forget your personal life.
Wow.
And then when you get back in the lift to go back up at night, you forget your work life. And it is such, it's fantastic because it is such an exaggeration for effect. But actually, many of us kind of, I suppose, struggle with how do these two worlds meet? And like you say, never the twain shall meet. Well, you didn't say that exactly, but you know what I mean.
That program sounds amazing. It's so interesting.
It's awful as well. It's like, oh my God. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant way to look at how ridiculous this personal professional split is.
And I think also, if you've ever been in a kind of toxic work environment, which I think very many people have been, I think that's also a call that's waking you up to say who you are needs to be present, either in that situation to rise up and stand up and be more who you are, or out of that situation and to be more creative. And I think if you are in a toxic work situation, it is a call to ask yourself, what do I really want to do? Who am I really? What about those farm animals? And I think we miss that. I think people get pushed down and bogged down and thinking there's something wrong with them. Why does no one like their ideas? Why are they not progressing? Why did that other person get the thing when they're more skilled and they have more talents, or whatever it is? Because it's never fair in these kind of systems. So it is a call to, as I'm a writing teacher, to take out your journal and find quiet moments at lunchtime, to find quiet moments in the morning when you're on the way to work, if you still work in an office, and to just begin to question and go within. And a path comes. The path will always come. The more you go within, the outer path comes. It always does.
That's lovely. And I can agree with you as well. And I think, though, there's that struggle of starting. Like, a lot of people I know say, no, journaling doesn't work for me. I was probably one of those for a while. I can't write. My handwriting is terrible. We have so many excuses, or not excuses isn't fair either, but so many hang-ups about writing, something that we do every single day, probably all of us. So how does someone start, just take that very first step and go, do you know what, I'm going to give this a go?
I think you really have to lower the bar. So not buy yourself a fancy journal, buy a really cheap notebook from Tesco. You really have to just say, I'm going to scribble in this notebook. I'm barely going to have legible writing. When I journal, half of it I can't even read. It's not that I have to read it. I just have to express it and get it down. buy something that maybe the 8-year-old you would have loved, buy something silly, or buy some colored pencils, and just think that anything you put down is writing. And you don't even have to write. I recommend as well writing in your smartphone while you're walking. I absolutely love doing that, because if you are stuck and blocked, the rhythm of moving your feet while you're walking in the park or around the shops, things bubble up, especially if you've created an intention. If you think, I'm going to walk around the shops and I'm going to think about this challenge I have, things will bubble up, and just note them down in your smartphone. And that's journaling. You've started to journal. And I think the other thing that's heavily in Heart, Sass and Soul is the object writing. That's the fastest way to get yourself writing. And it's so simple. The best way, I think, to start with a piece of fruit, a plum, a pear, a peach, whatever you want to start with, and see what you can taste, smell, see, hear, touch, feel about this piece of fruit. And think about the movement of you eating it, the movement of any kind of movement, how it moved in the tree. And you just keep your hand moving, focusing on those senses for either 90 seconds, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. And you don't stop to cross out spelling mistakes. You don't stop to correct anything. You just focus on your senses. I see this, I feel this. If you move away from the object and you start thinking about your grandfather, you start thinking about a memory of a holiday, you go there and you find that you've written freely. Every single person who does this exercise will write freely. And then you've journaled, and then you've freed up that creative energy, which you can then use to then think about other things, to write about other things, to think about more pressing situations. And it's completely magical to do this on a regular basis.
So somebody said to me recently, why would I need to put it down on paper if it's in my head?
Oh, such a good question.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Because for me, it's like, I'm so much a writer. It's like, well, of course, where else would you put it? But like, the reason is that when it's on paper, it's real, it's tangible, and it lives somewhere outside of your head. And that's really powerful, because things in your head get distorted. They get distorted by past memories, they get distorted by other thoughts, by other feelings, and you never quite ground them down. The sort of way to be more powerful and creative is to ground yourself, not be in your head. And writing is grounding. You're literally grinding out marks on a piece of paper. You're pulling the energy into yourself and onto the desk. That's what it is. It's very much energetic and making it real.
I've never thought about it like that before, that it's grounding, that it is connecting. Yeah, you're a part of you to something else. And yeah, that's kind of cool. But the senses, Greta, because in Heart, Sass and Soul, there is a lot about 7 senses. And many people might go, we only have 5.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a good point, Susan. So yeah, I can explain this. Yeah, we have like our 6th sense as well, don't we? Our intuition. So the object writing is taken from songwriting. This is invented by Pat Pattinson. He was legendary professor at Berklee College of Music. And I studied with his course for a year. And so, yes, the 7 senses are because the feeling and the moving, they just open you up. So this object writing is designed to help songwriters get raw material for their songs. And it's literally what the songwriters use in Nashville, especially in the sort of country music genre. So they take like a whiskey bottle or something and they use these 7 senses and how they feel and how they mean the movement. And they write a whole blues or country song about it. So I think what Pat Pattinson does is he's just opening up your entire bodily system with these extra senses, because they do exist. Our feeling is the sense that we forget about the most, unless you're a deeply feeling person. But we're not taught to feel. We're not taught to think about our bodily movement. What's going on inside us? What are we actually feeling? And then people just kind of chalk that down to anxiety. There's feeling there, there's movement. That's what you're experiencing. You want to get that out into creativity. So that's why we're using these 7 senses. We're bypassing the anxiety, which if you don't, that just leads to the chattering in your head, which stops you from writing. So it all kind of links in together.
I suppose it's getting in touch then, Greta, with what is going on inside, because let's just say your heart speeds up and you just maybe jump to the conclusion that means anxiety. when actually it might be speeding up because it's so happy that you've picked this object to write about.
Exactly. And when you just focus on, that feeling and that movement, and you displace that onto the object, yes, you're transmuting it. It's about transmuting a feeling into creativity. So it lives in another realm now. It doesn't live in anxiety or stress or depression or shame, or it lives in creativity. And that's an energy now, a new energy. And that's so, so powerful.
I've mentioned already, my background is in accounting. And, you know, for many people in accounting, or let's say law or sciences, they're all going to say, well, there's no place for feelings. You know, I'm logical, I'm rational, and that is what my writing has to be.
Yeah. And I think it's ironic because when you said that, the first thing I thought was, you know, art and science are kind of the same. They come round in a full circle. If you go all the way in science and all the way in art, and maths too, all the way in maths, you come to music. You come to the tones, the harmonies, the melodic phrasing. That's maths. Musical theory is mathematical theory. So that's really interesting. And also, there's no place for feeling. You know, when I got my first accountant, the reason I chose my accountant was because he understood creative people. I tried to find an accountant, and the first accountant I tried to find, he told me I wasn't allowed to have these multiple streams of income. I had to have one job, and I had to put it through like this. And then one day I was at a party, like a film party, and I don't know, we were talking about accountants, and someone said, there's this one firm in Manchester, they only work with creatives. And so that accountant was amazingly creative, totally understood me, never judged me. And I got a great service for years working with this accountant. So I think we have to think that everybody has feelings, and we're connecting with the person first. And that person might actually want you to just be human while you're doing the numbers for them. And that would be great. So you get to be in your zone, feeling great doing the numbers, and they get to feel that you actually care about them, or that you have a heart-to-heart connection. It sounds kind of like a bit dramatic. Why do we need a heart-to-heart connection? But without that, we're losing the spice of life. You'd rather have a friendly accountant who likes you, cares about your numbers. So I think it really is important for everybody.
And also, you can put that feeling into your writing and you will stand out. You don't have to write in this old, stodgy, kind of formal way, because really, if you think about accounting, that word is to give an account of, which is storytelling.
Yes.
And so you're using the numbers to tell a story. And if you can't tell a story with those numbers, then you're never going to bring them to life for people. And it's always going to be an us and them. So I do think there's a huge room for creativity because we all have it in us.
Definitely. And I did work with a financial client at some point, and she said exactly what you said. I've learned that even in finance, you can still have a story. And especially if you're working in the business world and you have to, like you say, present your numbers to the board, present your numbers to someone you want to sell to, it is about the story. It reminds me of Brené Brown. Stories are data with soul.
That's right.
Says.
Yeah.
It is all about the story. But I think also not to sort of get too hung up on the story bit, because it doesn't mean you have to be a storyteller or tell stories. You just have to put some humanity in. You just have to share something about the meaning, and you find that meaning through being more creative in your own practices. I think you learn what meaning is. What does this mean? Why is it important? It comes from practice.
And then I read an article that you wrote, and it was pre-pandemic, but you talked about creativity being the missing piece in the wellness puzzle. And we talked about divided lives, and we've talked about disconnected lives or severance and all of that. Is that piece, that creativity piece, ignored by many of us? Do we not believe we're creative?
I think it is ignored. I think it sort of sits out in a silo when it needs to be integrated. So I think people think for wellness, they have to do breathing, or perhaps they have to do some aromatherapy, or they have to go and have a treatment, you know, things like they go to the spa, perhaps do some therapy even. I think they put that in over here. and they put the creativity bit way on the other side, and they don't think they're creative because they've been told they're not for many years at school. But throughout school, we lose our creativity so badly that 90% of people by a certain age just are not creative, and most 5-year-olds are. So I think that it is the missing piece, because in days gone by, we healed through shamanic methods. We healed through metaphor, through art, through storytelling, through writing. And then with the birth of all the psychological sciences, we thought we had to go to a place and get help from somebody else and try and sort through whatever problems you have. And I think we've forgotten that we have this enormous ability to heal ourselves through connecting to our own creative energy and using that to transmute what we feel. It's definitely a massively underlooked part of life.
It just sounds so simple when you say it like that as well. And just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, but we all have that ability. We don't have to talk. Maybe some people would express themselves better with art than with words or with cooking or whatever it might be. But there's a creativity inside of each of us that helps us be more whole.
100%. Yeah, I love that you said we don't have to talk. Yeah, so much, because many people have lost their ability to speak authentically. So then talking is, they don't realize it, but it's not quite what they want to say. They're not saying what they want to say. And this is why in like my model, the communication pyramid, the voice is right at the bottom, because that's the last thing we're uncovering. So yeah, totally. If people can intentionally cook, intentionally bake, intentionally sew and garden and walk and play with their kids, or play with, football. I mean, I don't know if football's creative, but whatever you're doing, if you're infusing it with this energy that I'm going to put my feeling into it. Yeah, joy. I'm going to cultivate something here. This is a practice. I'm doing this for a reason. And then that grows, that sense of I'm a creative person. I do creative things. I live a creative life. And it spirals into huge things. I think you said earlier about getting started in journaling. If your life is this hubbub of creativity and passion and really feeling deeply about whatever it is you're doing, that spills over. You all spill over into your journaling. So it's all really one thing. I know in the book I have so many disparate things that I weave together, because it is really so holistic. It's not about sitting at your desk with a quill pen.
No, I mean, you encourage us to go outside and
yeah,
write outside or whatever as well. Like you talked about the walking earlier. And I guess there's a huge part of being in nature then as well that is going to open that creativity up.
It's huge. Yeah. And I know I'm like a new sort of adoptee of nature, because I've always grown up in cities and finally understand the nature thing. Yeah. It's not that you have to like nature or appreciate nature. You just have to be in nature, and it will change how you feel about yourself. And I think we don't realize that. I think it's very underrated, being in nature.
I grew up by the sea, and if I don't get to the sea on a regular basis, because now I live nowhere near the sea, I feel that like it's almost starts calling me, because I really begin to miss it and its energy, and I suppose it's inspiration.
Yeah, it is an inspiration. Yeah, it's about tapping into whatever can get you in that inspirational state. That's what it is. Every day doing something, every single day, walking every day. I mean, these are simple things that you can do. And if you can't walk, you can cycle. If you're in a wheelchair, you go out and you move. It's this movement and this regular rhythm of having creative practices that are really small. Like the object writer, you could do 90 seconds a day. It's tiny, and it's just thinking, this is important. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to enjoy this.
Absolutely. And the other thing then that I love when people like introduce me to a new way of thinking about something, because you talked about gratitude in a way that it isn't, I suppose, the answer to everything. And I'm not saying it ever was, but I like what you say about gratitude, and maybe you could tell us.
Yes, definitely. So I think when gratitude is misplaced, it can actually be very harmful. So gratitude in itself is so, so powerful. And scientifically, it has all these benefits, opens the heart space, reduces anxiety, connects you to yourself and the world. It's absolutely fantastic. But in this article, I tell this story of how when I was young, I must have been, I don't know, 12, no, maybe 14. And I went with my school friends to see Madonna. It's a really long time ago. Madonna at Wembley Stadium, so long ago. And I used to play music at that time. So I'd gone to music school in the morning. So I was tired from going to that. I was wearing one of these velvet bodies, you know, those really tight things. So I was kind of hot and bothered, trying to look cool for Madonna concert. Anyway, I fainted. We were right near the front. So, I mean, everyone's pushing and shoving. I fainted, had to be pulled out. And my friends didn't come to get me. And I managed somehow to find them again. And they were like, oh my God, you're here. And oh, it was great. And what happened to you? And it was kind of like, they weren't concerned about my welfare. And so my friend's mum picked us up, and my friend said to her mum, oh, Greta fainted at the concert. And their mum was furious, absolutely furious with them, because it was two sisters that I had gone with. And she said, never ever do that to your friend again. You have one friend. You can see Madonna anytime. Your friend is more important. You should look out for your friend. And she was so angry at them for not having taken care of me. The story I tell about gratitude, because I could have gone home that night and thought, oh, I saw Madonna today, had a great time. My friend's mum picked us up. Wasn't it good? Aren't I lucky? I live so near to Wembley Stadium, blah, blah, blah. But I'd be ignoring the massive red elephant that my friends didn't come to get me. I would be ignoring that hurt, basically, ignoring my emotional feeling. And this is a long story to say that that is what we do with gratitude when we just do it blindly. Each day we say, oh, I'm so grateful for my house, grateful for my car, grateful for this job. But what if you're ignoring the fact that your boss bullied and belittled you that day? What if the neighbor was really rude to you? You can really ignore key, massive screaming red flags in your life with this real need to be grateful. And it's what people call spiritual bypassing, where you're trying to be a good person. You're trying to be somebody who is grateful and happy and joyous, but you're not doing it in an authentic way. And it can be so, so damaging, not only to yourself, but others. Because if you lose touch with your feeling, you lose the ability to have empathy for other people's feelings as well. So it doesn't help anybody really. So yeah, that's my take on gratitude, that it comes with a warning, I think.
And I think that's a really powerful point, actually, Greta, because perhaps it's also the upbringing or the generation we come from, but it was kind of like you should be happy with what you've got and you're happy with your lot. And I can easily see that translating into a gratitude list and kind of going, well, at least I've got this to be grateful for, and having this awful life somewhere else.
Yeah, it's the at least, yeah. And I see this all over social media, actually. I see people saying, oh, I can't complain. Those people over there have it so much worse. And I have all of this. But I think what people are missing is the world does not need your misery to help it along. You know, like you feeling awful, but pretending you don't, that's not helping those people over there who feel awful. If you can get yourself in a authentic state, then you change the world, then you help from a balanced whole place. And that's what we need to get out.
That is absolutely so true. And we talked about toxic workplaces earlier on, and just now as well a bit, but by tolerating stuff that you wouldn't expect someone else to, or you would tell other people not to come and work there or whatever, you're doing yourself a disservice, but you're also, it's a ripple effect, because the elephant in the room is not getting addressed.
Yeah, we think that we're tolerating it, but we're not. It's causing huge damage with a thin sort of curtain on top. And I think that's the way to look at it. Every single day there's an erosion being done. There's an erasure. There's a damage. It's like kind of like in the sea. We were talking about the sea earlier, and the sea is wearing down the rocks every day. That environment is like the sea. It's wearing you down, wearing you down, wearing you down. And so you're a tiny pebble. You were a huge rock when you started. So, you tolerated that, but you didn't really, because now you're smaller and smaller and smaller. And
you might not find your way back.
Yeah, it's very difficult to find your way back. So you have to then not erode anymore. And that's why the journaling is so important, Because in these toxic situations, often there's a lot of there's gaslighting, there's people pretending that things happen when they didn't, sort of it's very murky, it's never clear, you don't quite know where you stand. So you have to know where you stand in your personal writing. And you have to, like with your friend who said, why do I need to write it down? It's so that you can write it down, have a look again as well, and check, oh, that did happen. They said it didn't happen. Oh, I wasn't late for that meeting. That meeting was scheduled at that time. And I think these things are more common. I think these kind of murky environments are very common. And so we have to keep ourselves clear by trying to have clarity in our own minds. That's the only way we can actually handle that situation and get out of it.
And then, of course, I suppose the irony of the whole thing is, in that organization, they want you to be innovative and creative.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Yeah, that is the 100% irony. Like, where's your creativity? Weren't you creative today? and of course you can't be. You're so stressed and anxious. You probably can't do anything. And this is the danger, because creativity needs calm. It needs, well, not exactly complete calm. I love that quote by Nietzsche where he says, you must still have chaos in yourself to give birth to a dancing star. Like my favorite quote. So that chaos, some chaos is really good, but you need space to be creative. You can't have somebody breathing down your neck saying, where's your piece of creative work? Where is it? Like, want it 5 minutes ago. You can't do that.
And so then, Greta, what I'm concluding is it comes down to you taking responsibility for you, because no one else will.
Yes.
And it's no good to blame and say, well, the workplace was this, or I'm not that, or whatever. It's actually about sitting down and really figuring out, who am I and what do I want?
Exactly. This is the only way to move forward.
And having that journal, like a scrappy, I love it, buy your scrappy whatever for one that you liked as a kid with Spider-Man on it or whatever it might be, and just start to write to yourself, because it's not for anyone else either.
Yeah, start to write. Everything is writing. A list.
Yeah, checklist.
A word.
Yeah,
checklist. A shopping list. Everything. It's so about lowering the bar until you find you're in the flow. One day, there you are, you filled out, half the book. And then things are really moving and really exciting.
You might be the next Greta Solomon. I was going to say J.K. Rowling, and I thought, no, I can't do that.
I was thinking the next Greta Solomon. Oh.
So nobody can obviously see this, but I'm holding up a copy of Heart, Sass and Soul, Journal Your Way to Inspiration and Happiness. And I'm going to put that in the show notes. And it says at the back, discover and recover who you are. And that's a really nice way of saying it. And, it might be something you read now and pick up again in a couple of years when you need it. It might really speak to you now. And I guess different people speak to different people. So I would say check out Greta's website and check out Greta. Greta, how does somebody connect with you then if they'd like to know more?
So I think definitely on my website, gretasolomon.com. I'm a bit less on social media these days, but do come and find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And send a message. If I love talking to people. So send a message, email me. I'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time and your openness. And it was great. I loved where our conversation went. And I hope you'll come back again someday.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I've loved it.
Great.
Thank you for listening today. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know who would enjoy it too. I believe we are all entitled to enjoy our work, and the future of work life will be changed by those who put people first and create more fulfilling work lives for themselves, their colleagues, their teams and organisations. If you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to have covered, guests you'd like to hear from, or questions for me, please drop a line to Susan at beyond-thenumbers.com. And finally, please consider leaving a review.